Governor Tom Ridge, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, sir. And last but certainly not least, one of America's most respected senior military former leaders, General Jack Keane. General Keane.
Well, thank you, Ambassador. I'm honored to be here with my distinguished colleagues who I know very well, and particularly Senator Lieberman. We spent a lot of time together and dealing with difficult challenges. I appreciate you all in attendance. I'll try to be brief here. I totally agree that the global security challenges facing the United States are on a scale we've not seen since the end of World War II with the rise of the Soviet Union. We've got Sunni-based radical Islam that's morphing into a global jihad. We've got the Islamic State, the Islamic Republic of Iran, whose stated strategic objectives are to dominate the region, to do that, to drive the United States out of the region, and also to accomplish their end to destroy the state of Israel, a consistent and persistent policy that they've never given up on. And we also have two revisionist powers, Russia and China, who are seeking regional domination. They want to be world powers and they want to have global influence. Most of that, in the case of Russia and also in the case of China, will be at the expense of the United States. And lastly, we have advanced technology countries who have the capability today, and it's a growing capability, to destroy, using cyber attack, our finance, banking, transportation, and utility systems. It's just a matter of time that a terrorist organization will purchase this capability, and therefore they will not have mutual assured destruction, so to speak, that another nation state has, because the United States has the #1 offensive capability in the world. If you believe that 9/11 was one of the goals was to help economically collapse the United States, they didn't understand this, so that was a strategic blunder on their part. If a terrorist organization gets the cyber capability to do that, they wouldn't hesitate to use it. And we all know that. So these are challenges that are facing us, and we have faced challenges before. But what makes these challenges so different and so much more serious and dangerous is that we are failing miserably at coping with them. Something in the past, we've had great capacity to deal with security challenges. And it's really quite extraordinary because our adversaries, as a result of it, are more emboldened, and our friends fear the consequences of these actions that are being taken, and they've lost confidence and trust in us. Henry Kissinger has said publicly, all of whom we know here well, that he's never seen a time in American history when the United States' influence and power in the world is so diminished. That is absolutely extraordinary. This is the United States of America. And that's where we are, and how sad and tragic that is. Let me just focus on a couple of areas here. Iran, the Islamic Republic of Iran, in the early 1980s, began their pursuit of their regional hegemonic objectives. And they have been succeeding at that. They have used their proxies and their fighters to gain influence and control in Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Yemen. And they're not going to stop there. They have stated goals to continue to pursue that. They've been in a 15-year journey to acquire a nuclear weapon, and they are going to acquire a nuclear weapon. We just declared we have an agreement that will guarantee that in 15 years. That's astounding what we have done. The harsh reality of this is we sit here today after 35 years of this, and we still have not accepted that Iran is our #1 strategic enemy in the world. And #2, we have not come together in a regional alliance to form a strategy to deal with this. The Iranians have been killing Americans because we were so crucial to their strategy. They told us to drive us out of the region. They began, as the governor mentioned, they blew up the Marine barracks in Lebanon. They blew up the embassy in Lebanon. When we moved to the annex, they came back and blew that up. That's 500 dead right there. They blew up the Kuwait embassy. They blew up our barracks in Saudi Arabia. They conducted a 10-year assassination and kidnapping campaign all through the 1980s. They killed the CIA station chief Buckley. It nearly brought down a Republican administration in doing an arms deal with the Iranians and giving them TOW missiles, using money for the Contra rebels. That happened to be a Republican administration. In 35, and then they began in 2004 to 2008 in killing Americans in Iraq, training Hezbollah commanders training Iraqi Shia militia at 2 bases in Iran. We knew where those bases were. We knew exactly what was taking place there. Their engineers, Quds Force engineers, developed an advanced IED that could penetrate any armor weapon we had, any armored vehicle we had, and they told them only use it against American vehicles. They gave them advanced rockets and advanced mortars and cash. And they sent the Iraqi Shia militia back into Iraq, where they killed hundreds and hundreds of Americans during that campaign. They've been at this for a long time. Not a single Democratic or Republican president has ever countered this in 35 years. Not a single one has ever stood up to this regime. And now we stand here today, and regardless of the politics, whether it's a Democrat or Republican, we have a president today that has made a deal with the Iranians that is going to permit them to have a nuclear weapon in 15 plus years. That's how far we have come with this. When are we going to wake up and get serious about who our real enemies are in the world and what we have to do to gather people together to face up to it? The world demands and needs U.S. leadership. This is not going to happen without U.S. leadership. That is the truth of it. The Europeans, many of them feckless, will cower in fear of this threat and not stand up to it. Whether it's ISIS or whether it's the Iranians and their move towards a nuclear weapon. You watch what's going to happen here. They will cheat as they have cheated in the past. They will push back on any kind of verification. It will be bureaucratic. They will do everything they can to roll back the inspectors. Eventually, an informant will come forward, like it happened in the 2 secret sites, and we will have some information on the development of a nuclear weapon. They're not going to wait 15 years. Why would they? They know that they're going to get away with it. And they know that the Europeans, and possibly the United States, will not have the stomach to stand up to catching them cheating and roll back the sanctions. Not going to happen. We're kidding ourselves. The United States leadership has to step up here. The deal is done, and ensure that there is verification and that there is some toughness to it. This administration will not do any of that. We have to look forward to a new administration. And I'm not talking Republicans and Democrats here. I'm talking about American leadership coming forward to admit that the security challenges the United States is facing are truly significant. And we've got to deal with these challenges. ISIS started out several hundred fighters, all Iraqis, trying to recover the defeat that their predecessors had. And we knew they were defeated. This was around 2010. Several hundred, operating in the shadows. As a result of the Syrian Arab Spring, and initially the fact that the rebels in Syria had momentum against that regime, they came here to get the weapons they needed. We said no. But they did have momentum, and if you can recall, people were saying it's just a matter of time that the Assad regime is going to fail. What stopped that? Iran stopped that. They were all in. Quds Force leadership, Qasem Soleimani, his lieutenants, thousands of them on the ground, 5,000 Hezbollah out of Lebanon, At one time, close to 6,000 to 7,000 Iraqi Shia militia in there, all in, propping up that regime, not permitting part of their strategic objective, which Syria is clearly, to lose that. Motivated the Russians, to be sure. They provided a lot of supplies, but the mainstay of keeping Assad in power is Iran. And a result of that, stalemate ensued. Baghdadi, this is his #1 strategic decision he makes. He's a terrorist organization operating in decentralized cells and not doing too well at that. We still had a counter-terrorist force there that could go after him. So he's not making much progress. He looks to Syria, and he sees stalemated civil war. He said, if I move into the northeastern part of Syria, who is going to stop me? The answer to that is no one. And he systematically takes territory, towns, and villages. He moves from several hundred Iraqi Syrian terrorists and grows a 30-plus thousand strong terrorist army in 2 years. And most of them have nothing to do with Syria or Iraq. The majority of his force are outside of those two countries. He built that. No other terrorist organization has ever achieved that end. And that is how he invaded Iraq, with that terrorist army, and took territory and expanded territory in Syria. It's the stalemated civil war in Syria that opened the opportunity for him to do that. The Iranians have continued to prop up the Assad regime, and despite all of the Russian and Iranian effort, the regime was losing ground and control this last year. Not well reported in the media, but they were in a precarious situation as the Iranians understood this, motivated the Russians to conduct a military intervention so that they would guarantee the survival of Assad and the Alawite regime. They only have 22% of Syria that they control, but they were about to lose even more of that and put the regime's survival in a precarious situation. That is why the Russian military intervention is in there, absolutely motivated by the Iranians. There's a counteroffensive going on right now, and much to the Russian surprise and much to the Iranian surprise, Hezbollah's on the ground, Shia militia are on the ground, Quds forces are on the ground, leaders are on the ground. It's taking place in 3 different places, and it's not going as well as they thought. Even with Russian artillery, Russian rockets, Russian airplanes, all supporting that effort. And the reason is because there's Syrians who are willing to give up their life and put their families at risk and their communities to fight for a better life. That's the truth of it. And they're standing up against it. And they should be examples for us all, as have what has been taking place at Camp Liberty as an example for all of us. This is all about people's intense moral courage to place a larger concept, an idea of freedom and liberty above themselves, and to be willing to die for it. The reality is that the expansion of ISIS was enabled by policy decisions the United States made in Syria in not supporting those rebels when they needed help, and that's tragic. Not just leaving Iraq as we did, not just leaving Iraq militarily, not just politically disengaging Iraq. I would submit it began in early 2009 when the new administration came in, which underwrote Maliki's malfeasance in disenfranchising the Sunnis. So our situation is this. We have ISIS on the move. They have expanded. They have 7 affiliate countries now. They have formal relations, signed signatures with them. There's 3 more about to take place, Tunisia, Somalia, and Bangladesh. They've developed a worldwide following where people are willing to kill their fellow citizens, either directed or motivated or inspired by this organization. It has touched the United States. So radical Islam is a major issue. We have the nation state of Iran in the same region that's bound and determined to guarantee the preservation of the regime by acquiring a nuclear weapon. And they are on their way to do that. When a new administration comes to power, what we have to do is recognize that the people at Camp Liberty They can no longer stay in Iraq. We have got to get them out of there and get them back to true liberty and freedom, because they are never going to be protected there. I mean, I'm all for air power, but air power is not going to stop. It's not going to stop rockets. It's not going to stop mortars. They won't be responsive enough. That's just the reality of it. Should we have it? Yes. Is it a deterrent? Yes. Does it make sense to do it? Yes. But they're still going to be threatened. They're still going to be dangerous. They're still going to be killed. We've got to get them out of there. That's the policy of the new administration. Second thing, we need a regional strategy desperately here to push back against the Iranians' regional hegemonic objectives. And we need to lead that effort. We've lost the relationship with many of our Sunni allied friends in the region because they watch us help facilitate a nuclear deal that endangered their sovereignty and their security. And we are their number one ally. They watched us do that. That's why they don't look at the United States as a reliable ally. But most of their kids all go to our schools. So they're betting on the long-term relationship here. They're betting that these policies are temporary and the United States is going to change. I believe the United States will change. And then the third thing is the nuclear policy deal. We got to hold the Iranians' feet to the fire, new administration to do that, be tough as nails about it, knowing they're going to be cheating, and then we have to declare right at the beginning of this administration that we are never going to permit Iran to have a nuclear weapon as a matter of U.S. policy. I mean, a president could identify the weaknesses in that deal. And if those weaknesses are exploited to the point where Iran is on its way to having a nuclear weapon, then U.S. policy will be, we will stop that from happening. Thank you very much.
General Jack Keane, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. You've sat through three extraordinary statements by three respected Americans. I introduced this panel by saying you might wonder what the connection is between broad strategic questions about Iran, Russia, Syria, Iraq, and 2,200 unarmed men and women at Camp Liberty. If you sat through and listened and absorbed everything you've heard, you now realize that the Camp Liberty residents are essentially a billboard, a flashing billboard of America's position in the Middle East. Everyone in the Middle East can see that we made a promise and it's not been kept. Everyone in the Middle East can see that there's a resistance group that stands for a non-nuclear democratic Iran with popular sovereignty for 80 million people, and that we are ignoring them. And everyone can see that the United Nations made promises to resettle these people that have gone unfulfilled. This is the position that we're in, and Camp Liberty represents essentially the status to which America's credibility and policy have sunk. And you've heard some very strong statements. Let me just ask about time. We started a little late, we've gone a little late. I think we're going to have to conclude it right there. So let me just say once again to all of you who came, the Iranian American community from Missouri and around the country, great to have you here. Thank you for sponsoring this event. Thanks to the senators who helped make it possible. Thank you to our diplomats from foreign embassies who came here today, and particularly thanks to the Senate staff members who took the time to come and listen to these three great Americans. Thank you all.